And for those that don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Mike Ribble. I'm a Director of Technology for a school district, but come here to talk about digital citizenship. It's interesting to listen at least to a couple of these early speakers. When I started this about a dozen years ago in digital citizenship, two of our speakers weren't even alive then, so it's interesting to think about that as we talk about this. And I do want to give kudos to everyone that worked on getting this. I do want to thank folks like Dr. Jason Oler, who has been just an incredible resource to talk about. So thank you, Dr. Oler, thank you, Jason, and Mary Alice, of course. So we have a great panel here to get us started. We've got several coming up, but we're going to kick it off with this first panel, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves real quickly, and then we're going to jump right in. And so I'm going to start right here, and Mappa, is that correct?
Amitabh, or just keep it to Ami.
Okay, and we'll start with you.
All right, so hi guys, I'm from India, as you can tell. Really excited to be here. I'll also keep it to the 6 words aspect. So I'll start off with saying an unapologetic feminist and a believer in technology for social change. Working in India, using social media for social change. In the last 1 year, we have done about 100 workshops across the country, reaching out to 10,000 young people, talking about online safety, social media, social change, and sustainable development. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi everybody, Sarah Gretter from Michigan State University. I work in the College of Education with pre-service teachers, and we've been redesigning a course on teaching and learning with technology to integrate some of the digital citizenship elements. I really enjoy working with that group because it is a group that kind of gets the short end of the stick. They're not students anymore, but they're not teachers yet. They're often labeled as tech savvy, but actually need a lot of guidance to become digital teachers and to become the change for their own students to become the digital change as well. So I'm excited to be here and talk about those challenges that we've been facing in redesigning that course.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Michelle Drouin. I am a developmental psychologist and I'm a professor at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne. My research is centered around how technology is affecting us through the life course. So from the time you're born until the time you die, what are the impacts that technology is having on your development and the way you see the world? I'm known best for my work on sexting and technology addiction, so I'm sure some of the questions today will target those areas, and if you have questions later on, feel free to grab me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kristen Mattson. I'm a high school library media specialist just outside of Chicago. Recently finished my own doctoral studies with a study about digital citizenship curriculum for high school students. And I'm really just sort of looking at what messages we are sending about teenagers and about technology through those curriculum, and how we're making those curricular aspects a really important part of what we do in school instead of just an add-on.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Repking, and I'm the owner and founder of Cyber Safety Consulting. I am out of Chicago, and I work with almost all the facets. I go to schools and talk to students, talk to parents, and I've developed a curriculum that goes in the classroom. The primary goal, in my belief, is that we need to get all of the components of students, parents, and schools on the same page, speaking the same language, in order to help kids mentor, model how to be positive digital citizens online.
Thank you, Liz. So let's get started. I'm going to hit everyone with the first question, and we asked them, what now for digital citizenship? Didn't really just want to talk about what is the definition, but we do want to talk about where do these conversations need to start, Liz? How early and when do we need to start talking about them?
Well, how early and when? I think the challenge is that so many of their concepts that revolve around technology and how they act appropriate online, how they stay safe, involve very abstract ideas. Kids lose all the visual cues that they see in real life. So if you're talking about bullying, if we're on the playground and I'm the bully to Kristen, I have all the visual cues of her emotion, her reaction. Online, when I'm the bully, I don't have those visual cues. So it becomes challenging conversations at an early age because they just don't have the capacity to process at that level. So the challenge is to take these abstract ideas, and this is what I do with the kids in the schools all the time, and give them some foundation and concrete examples so that they can relate to them. They can start to, I heard, I think it was Liv say earlier, and I swear she stole my words, connect the dots. I think that's the challenge all the way along, is how do we get these kids to take the abstract ideas of what they're dealing with and connect the dots to the effects on themselves, on others.
What about you, Dr. Mattson?
For me, I think that really where we're going now is thinking about digital citizenship beyond sort of that level of personal responsibility. A lot of the curriculum that's currently available focuses on sort of what kids should and should not do as just individual people in digital spaces. And I think all of us in this room can agree that part of the beauty of technology is that we've been able to develop a community outside of our physical borders. And so when we think about what does it mean to be a citizen, I'd really like that conversation to begin moving into spaces of what does it look like to be in a much larger global community, instead of just what does it mean to be an individual who's responsible online.
So I think your question was, how early should we start having these conversations?
Exactly.
So to me, the questions need to start as soon as your child can think and notice what's going on in a technological world. As soon as they see your device and they see you interacting with it, this is when the conversations begin. It's not when you hand them the connected device. Those should be the deeper conversations. But our children are very aware of online context before we give them any device to hold. So these are conversations that I think need to be had young. And as our lawsuit in Austria, I believe, where we have this young woman who's now saying, my parents were posting pictures of me when I was young, I don't agree with it. Children have opinions about what you post of them online. And we need to start engaging them in those conversations as soon as we involve them, even if they are not active members in what we're posting in our online lives. Those conversations, as soon as they can think, as soon as they notice this online world, those conversations need to begin.
And I think along the same line, within the context of colleges of education, those conversations need to happen from the very start. You know, the class that I teach is actually just an elective. So some of those students can go there 4 or 5 years without having anything to do with how to use technology and how to teach about technology. There's a lot of that integration, technology integration, but it really stays at the level of the tools and not really the skills and the pedagogy about technology.
Exactly.
Yeah, completely agreeing. I mean, we saw two amazing kids have such an amazing presentation. I think the day you have built your capacities to actually have conversation on digital citizenship, that is the day you started, and you started with anyone and everyone. Because digital citizenship is a reality of our times, and kids are on board and equal strong stakeholders.
They're right here. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions and focus on a couple of different people because of their bios and some of their background. So, Kumar, I'm going to start with you, and Michelle, I'm going to ask this question. Is technology changing us as people? And if so, can digital citizenship help provide direction for that transition? Why don't you start here?
Certainly, direct yes. I will take a very concrete example from India, which is a young and growing democracy. We are still understanding what citizenship means for us. And the digital world, Twitter, Facebook, Google, they have really revolutionized this information hunger in India. And it's helping us understand a lot about our country. And it is really helping us grow in this globalized times. Most of my country still remains uneducated, but still, with the help of tools like WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook, is getting informed in a way which wasn't possible earlier. So it is completely changing our information demographics, if I can name it like that.
Michelle?
I'm going to agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to give a decisive yes. we don't even know the impact that technology is having on our development. This technology became ubiquitous so quickly, and we are just catching up to even how to use it, much less the impact that it's having on how we develop as human beings and how we interact with each other. There is a huge area of active science that is looking into these issues. I'm one of these developmentalists who's very concerned with how it's impacting the development of children, but also, again, how we develop through the life course. Was there a second part of your question?
Just, can digital citizenship help in this?
Yes, I mean, digital citizenship is the conversation. It's the context through which we can start understanding the boundaries we need to put on these technologies, or the teaching that we need to do with regard to these technologies through the life course. So yes, it provides the platform, the context, and everything.
And I assume some of the things you're talking about is cyber psychology and some of those areas. I don't know this person personally. If somebody does, Dr. Mary Aiken's work, if you've read any of her work here lately, it to me is life-changing for me. It's just really exciting stuff. So if you get a chance, take a look at Dr. Aiken's stuff. Let's move on to the next question. This will be for Sarah, Kristen, and Liz. What are the key skills of digital citizenship, and how do we focus on them? What are some of those key skills?
You want to start with that? As a high school library media specialist, a big part of my job is to just integrate a variety of skills across content areas. And so when we think about digital skills, for me it goes beyond just how to use a technology or how to use it responsibly. I think media literacy is huge. I spend a lot of my time with kids focusing on how do I find information in this huge, vast sea of information that's out there. How do I find what I need? How do I evaluate that it's good? And then how do I use it to sort of form and shape my own understandings? And so I think that media literacy, digital literacy are all components of digital citizenship that we need to consider sort of how we're going to wrap those into the conversation.
We've been focusing a lot on using digital citizenship as the umbrella term, and then focusing on different aspects like media literacy, of course, but looking at it more as a mindset than a topic to study, and having that critical thinking towards all the media that we have access to on a daily basis, and also being able to be creative with it, because part of it is to be on the receiving end, and the other part is to be on the creative end, as we've seen with the speakers this morning. So being able to use those skills as a back and forth between us and the media that's out there.
I'm going to take a little bit different spin. I agree with everything you guys have said, but my experience is sitting with these kids day in and day out. In the past 2 weeks, I've probably sat with close to 1,000 kids and 500 parents. And the comments and the concerns and the feelings are consistent across the country, even across the age groups that I work with. And I go from early elementary up through high school. What I'm seeing is that this is a huge social emotional issue for the kids. What's happening, and I'm not a PhD, I'm just kind of out there in the trenches every day, and I have 3 kids that are 12, 15, and 18. But what I'm seeing is that they are in a world where they are trying to live out their whole social life, their whole social world, a lot of their education in a very public forum. And they're struggling to figure out, how do I humanize my relationships through technology? And I think one of the struggles for them is that they don't have a safe place to explore it until people like I come in or Diana comes in, where we get them out of assemblies, which a lot of schools, let's have Liz come in and give a big assembly, but when they get out of an assembly and they put them in a smaller classroom, and we work with curriculums or we do workshops, and we create this environment where they can look at us and say, how do I do this? How do I figure out what persona I want to be? I'm 13 years old, my hormones are all over the map, my body changes every morning, there's something different there that wasn't there yesterday. My relationships are changing, I'm getting romantic, they're just, growing up is hard. And then we layer on this whole technology piece where they are supposed to know exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And they certainly struggle to go ask their parents, because parents feel like They're way behind the 8 ball, and kids look at them. I have kids look at me all the time and say, the only thing my mom can do is order things from Amazon Prime and check her email. So the minute the parent comes in to try and mentor, to try and lead, to try and educate, there's an eye roll and there's an uncomfortableness in the topics. Try and talk to a 15-year-old boy about sexting as a mother. Unless you find a good way, it's a super short conversation. And they always have to go study right away. Mom, I got homework. So I think that the skills lie, and I'll say one more thing. I was with a group of 3rd graders, and I particularly struggle or feel challenged to talk. High schoolers are great. They get it. The topics are relevant. You can talk in adult language. 3rd graders are tough. And I said, I felt like I was walking out on a diving board, and I wasn't sure what I was doing. And I said, let's define digital citizenship to 3rd graders. And I thought, Liz, what in the world? And I said, what do you guys think digital means? Technology, right. And then I said, how about citizenship? And one little boy raised his hand, and he said, it's when you study about something a long time, and then you take a test. To become a part, this was the part, I couldn't believe it, to become a part of a community.
There you go.
Then he said, and then once you're a part of that community, you get privileges. And with that privilege comes responsibility.
Wow.
And I thought, wow. So the digital citizenship is a big word, but it's really about learning how to live in a community with responsibilities. So the skills we need to teach for that in life, it's just the challenge is finding the place to safely and confidently and comfortably teach them and give them a place to question and explore.
I agree 100%. And I think we've heard several times about the parents and the parent role, where that is, and hopefully we'll be able to hit on some more of that. But I think that we talk about that, but we have to get there. We have to be involved in that space, because they are the ones that are having those conversations. Some of them are pretty hard. And I've been down that road too. I only have 2 children, but we all go down that road, and it's changed. And each generation changes a little bit for us. So, thank you. The next question is for Kumar and Sarah and Michelle. So, if we talk a little bit about, is this idea of digital citizenship an ethics question, or is it a skills question? Is it an ethics question, or is it a skills question? Which one wants to start?
I think ethics is a part of life. It's definitely a base, and we need that. Those things have to be there. And skills are an addition, but skills are extremely, extremely important in this digital age, and especially the skills to express and to then hold back the reaction you get to that expression, which is to communicate. Now this could be called counter speech, or how do you take in the appreciation that you get or the criticism that you get. But ethics is certainly the base of it, because between criminality and creativity there's a very, very thin line, and that is pretty much drawn by your ethics and where you stand.
Exactly.
I would say a little bit of both. And the research that I do with the students that I teach, I've noticed that attitude has a lot to do with their decisions to teach digital citizenship in their future classroom. So if they don't personally care about digital citizenship, they're most likely not going to teach any of those components. I've had students in my class telling me this is not my job, this is a parent's job. And as a teacher, they don't see necessarily the point in doing that in their classroom. And then I think skills are, of course, I work in College of Education, so we're training teachers to become teachers, so skills is definitely a big part of this. But the skills are for teachers, as I see them, is to really connect the dots again, that thread between the content, the pedagogy, and the technology, and really working within the framework and connecting everything within their own context for themselves.
Anything I say would be redundant. They've said it well.
No, I mean, everything's, what's interesting, though, I would, when you talk to your students, especially when you talk about sexting and you talk about that piece of it, how do you get to that ethics piece of it and balance that against how they're, seeing the speed and the access of technology in that realm. Because what I'm starting to see even more clearly is this sort of juxtaposition of my online life, my real life, and where do those two places meet? And if you get a chance, ask anyone, Mary Alice, about some of her experiences with digital footprint, digital tattoo. She has a great story about that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think there are lots of questions in there. First, let's talk about my online life and my real life. I mean, my online life is part of my real life. There's a lot of research that just says there's a shift in self, or maybe no shift in self that happens online. Your online self is a projection of some part of you. It could be totally different than what you portray in the offline world, or it could be very similar. And there's also research that says that some children, some kids, some adults identify more with their online selves than they do with their offline selves. So the creation of that identity is one that I don't think you can say, your real self versus your online self. With regard to sexting in particular, obviously no one's really teaching children the mechanics of sexting. They're not like, get the best lighting, make sure you use that filter, that's the really good one. All of these conversations are embedded within ethical conversations. I mean, parents are trying, above all else, do you know what you want? You parents, you want your kids to be good kids, even more than successful, even more than, Nobel Prize winners. You want good children. And so all of our conversations are driven by these ethical and moral decisions and obstacles that they might face. So the technical aspects of it are not something that I think parents are really focusing on. Their conversations are really geared towards making their children good people. And now that means good digital citizens. And so I think the problem is, which we've said before and I think has been echoed a little bit within this panel, is that the parents haven't really caught up with how to teach that. How do we teach that when that was not, I did not grow up with technology. We had a floppy disk for email in college, which no one used, ever. People carried around, this floppy disk, no one used it. That we were at the height of sophistication. I went to Cornell and it was, really technology focused and nothing. So I have no experience at all in this technology. So I think parents and educators as well who are in this generation are really lost at how to even begin the moral conversations, because these were not moral dilemmas that we faced. We had to face whether or not we would, have sex with our boyfriend, but not whether we would sext with him. That was not something we faced, and still many of us have never faced that. We have never thought about sending a naked picture of ourselves.
And that, becomes that issue is, you don't know what you don't know, and so we pass it along and say, well, the kids know better than I do. And, it goes back to Prensky, the digital native, the digital immigrant. I think we've got to get to that we're all in this together, and we can't just say, we don't know, and now we have to go.
Let me just add one more thing. I mean, I've been a very vocal advocate of a parent's role in their child's technology life. Because although you may not know much about the technology they're using, you know a lot more than they do about life. You know about regret. You know about missteps. You know about triumphs. You know about social relationships. These are things that transcend the medium. So there is no conversation that is critical to your child's development that you cannot have just because you don't know the technology.
Liz, you want to share?
Yeah, I want to sort of just echo what Michelle's saying, and it's, I talk to so many parents, and they just come with these looks of panic. And what I want to tell them, or what I do tell them, is that, and it's real simple, you are the parent, and our job, they know the technology. So when you talk about skills versus ethics, but they don't. Ethics that's our job as parents when I think about it. But what I tell them is that if you get involved, first, you have to educate yourself enough so you're not asking them if they use that chap snatting thing. Because right then the conversation's very short.
That'll end it real quick.
Yeah. Then they tell you to go order another thing off at Amazon. But you need to build a bit of credibility as a parent. But then, if you get involved in the online life, if you see what they're Snapchatting or what they're putting on Instagram, or you create that environment where you talk about it, what happens is that it opens up all these lines to the conversations that we really want to have as parents. I told you the ages of mine. I'm like knee deep. I spent a half hour last night on the phone trying to figure out what to wear for picture day. But I don't want to spend my life, and no parent wants to spend their life talking about getting your homework done, your grades aren't good enough, your curfew, you're missing your curfew. I want to talk to them about how to have relationships, how to have good communication, how to have great self-esteem, how to make tough decisions in the face of challenge. Those, again, I go back to, those are very abstract concepts. But when it starts with a comment they made on Instagram or something that they put on Facebook, it starts with something that's relatable and concrete and really, really important to them. And they tune in, and then my experience is that then the conversation sort of goes to these areas of parenting that we really want to get into. And at the end of the day, as a parent, is our job, and that's where the ethics part comes in.
And I think that we've borne out that the research shows that if you're having those conversations, the better off you're going to have down the road as far as getting to those harder questions and getting to those harder discussions, because that's where it's at. So, you know, there's a lot to be said there and how that works together. Let's talk a little bit, bounce off that a little bit, and with Kristen and Kumar a little bit about where we see the rules of the future. So how are we looking at where we are and where we want to move to? And some of those things we've already heard from some of the other presenters of where we're moving as people with technology, and what that looks like. And I'll be interested to see from an international, see how that's going to look like. Sorry, I'm not picking on you from it, but how that's going to look like in this global society, because digital to me brings a lot of that globalization piece to it and makes that so much easier to have those conversations, but it also opens up a whole new discussion of where we are as people. So Kristen, do you want to start?
I feel like there's been, kind of going back to this last question too, there's definitely this mentorship gap. When we talk about parents maybe feeling kind of unaware, there are a lot of sort of policies and procedures in place in schools that keep adults and kids from sort of being in these relationships with each other online. Thinking about my own school district and the policies about not friending a student on social media or not following a student on social media puts up this barrier between the adults in the school and the children in the school. If your school doesn't have a one-to-one initiative, or you're not using these online platforms that give students a space to be in community with each other with an adult mentor, they really are figuring out sort of these ethics in these communities by themselves. There's some great research out there too that shows that kids are really able to kind of get into a digital community and pick up on those social norms of that community. So a kid may be able to go and be part of a fan fiction site where the rules and expectations of that site are very different than their online community in their Google Classroom with their teacher. And our kids are really able to kind of transition and mold in between those spaces. What I love about Liv's presentation was just how she is figuring out how students in different countries are reading in different ways than she is. And she is learning by doing. And it's unfortunate that right now a lot of our curriculum in schools doesn't expect kids to do. It's a lot of our presentations in an auditorium where we have a speaker telling kids sort of what not to do, but we don't have much in the way of curriculum that models what it's like to be in digital community with other people. So I'm hoping that what's next for digital citizenship is more opportunities for students to do things like Current is doing and like Liv is doing, but doing those things in schools, so that it doesn't have to be a project that I'm doing for fun because I have great parental support. I think we really need to look at not only policy, but also curriculum in order to give students those opportunities to really be in digital community.
agreeing with that, I also see that from a global context, rules would have to be a lot more fluid now. We would, and that we are seeing in every aspect of it, personalization. The speed of what Twitter has contributed to of this new digital citizen age makes information, knowledge, and action a very rapid growth. Something which was said brilliantly about curiosity and how that straight line is turned into a circle, or how that exclamation mark is just a question mark which worked out. These are realities of this time. And young people are getting information and they're realizing that growth is not really happening in years or decades as this used to be back in the day. Now it's within hours or within days. By the time we are done with this summit, all of us are at a different information base. Some of us have already started thinking of new projects. I mean, you see the young heads at the back, and they're already thinking, oh my God, this is how my social media campaign needs to change. Because the young girl and the young boy here just put us in our place. I think we don't get So that speed will ensure that we are a lot more fluid, we are a lot more open. Rules, policies, I mean, I know Patricia and I are working very closely on how do we keep on building the community standards a little better every day. So that aspect has to come in. And from a global scenario, we are getting a lot closer to what you are, and I think because, for example, Halloween, the way we celebrate it in Delhi is a lot different than the way you do it, but you would be really crazy to think about that people in Delhi, not even knowing the context of Halloween, actually celebrate it more crazily than you guys do. So these aspects are certainly bringing us closer, a lot more fluid, a lot more global in personalization. I am not so far away from America or Istanbul or Tokyo today. I just got those names looking at me. But yeah, that's sort of a thing that we are a global citizen in our psyche as well.
And that's one thing, ISTE, which a lot of us work with, the International Society for Technology and Education, that's one of their main goals is this globalization, this conversation on that level. So, that really opens up that discussion. So, let me do it real quick. We've got a couple panelists that work with college students. How do you see 21st century education changing? You're at the forefront. You're working with educators going out into the field, going looking at that. Is this going to be a change for them? I've watched new teachers coming out, and what kinds of things they're expected to know, even as teachers going out into the classroom, not even parents, but as teachers, and what that looks like. So the two of you want to kind of...
Doesn't matter, yes. I think that in terms of colleges of education, preparing future teachers, this needs to be a clear mission, and this is to be explicit in their mission statements. Moving beyond just integration, but really explicitly state that digital citizenship, media information literacy, and those aspects are integral parts of teacher training right now, especially for pre-service teachers. So making it explicit and changing a lot of work for faculty to change that mindset, for courses to be created, for those elements to be integrated throughout as well. It doesn't have to be a standalone topic to be taught, but integrated throughout, and that's going to take a lot of time. But from all the individuals that are here and the efforts that are put forward, I can see this, both a bottom up and a top to bottom change that's hopefully going to collide at some point.
Exactly.
So I was just at the conference for psychology teachers, and your question is very apt because we were confronting the decision how to teach these iGen learners. How many of you have a job in this room? You have a job. How many of you in your job use APA style? Right, you would. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of you. I didn't expect that many. We were confronting, that's way more than I thought would exist. We were discussing the fact that a lot of the things we focus on, and I'm going to take the psychology major as an example, but it could be any major. A lot of the skills we focus on are nearly obsolete in today's world. I am having my students write 12-page term papers, but shouldn't I actually get them able to write a single-page memo? because the way we're communicating is different. The way we're using technologies, the way we're interacting with others has changed so considerably with the influx of technology in our lifetimes that we are actually teaching obsolete skills. My students, these 15-page papers, 12 to 15-page papers, they do maybe the greatest work they ever produce in terms of size, ever. Because when they're actually in the workforce, they're never going to be tasked with something that's that large. You know why? No one wants to read something that large. Even our media outlets are saying, this is a 3-minute read, and then you say, okay, I have 3 minutes. So we need to think about that 3-minute read and think about whether or not we're teaching our students skills to help them get the concise message out in a way that's effective, rather than relying on old teaching methods that are just rehashing antiquated assignments from the past. So this is a constant discussion that we have in education, although if anyone does work for a university, you know that these wheels turn very slowly. So the change will probably come, but it is on our radar and we are trying to be responsive.
We'll take that to committee, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. The Senate will be discussing it in 2018.
I'll just jump in because it's a topic very close to my heart. I'm also working on setting up a university. I know, a crazy dream. But today, the aspect of storing information is an obsolete aspect. We don't need to do it. We learned up, and I'm from India, I studied mathematics. We had formulas, it's still in my soul, those formulas don't go out anymore. But if it's not creative, if it's not innovative, you can Google, tweet, Facebook it somewhere. So we need to teach skills to interpret information and turn it into action. But anything besides that, the curiosity part and the creativity is totally something which is not required anymore. So really, just echoing what both of you said, extremely important to be cutting edge when it comes to being an instructor, or being a facilitator was the word. Yeah.
And maybe that's, not even just doing a 1-page. Or maybe it's a video. Maybe it's 140 characters, right?
Yeah. I've actually made my student do a Twitter-style review of their work, and it actually is a lot more work. Like we know in a 6-word bio, it's a lot more work to concise everything in 140 characters than 15-page paper.
For those that have been in the Twitter chats, and thinking about what 140 characters, it makes a big difference. So I'm going to ask another question, but I want you all to be thinking about a question for the panelists, things that you've been thinking about as they've been answering some of these questions. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to you. So just be thinking about it, and you'll just need to pop up your hand, and I'll call you out. So I have one more question that I want to ask Michelle and Liz, and let's bring Kristen in on this one too. So, should a child's digital footprint or tattoo be erased after age 18 or 21? And whose responsibility will that be?
Wow, that's really.
Can I start?
Please.
Yeah. First of all, I've kind of coined a term for this that I really like, and it's pretty concrete, which, as Liz has pointed out several times, we need to use concrete terms. So I like to call it a digital billboard. Digital footprint sounds like something that could wash away, and digital tattoo sounds like something totally permanent. A billboard sounds like it could be changed a little bit. There's a prospect of change, but it's very big, and kids know what billboards are. And I do not believe they should be wipe clean. Well, this is a factual impossibility, but I do not believe they should be wiped clean at 18. It is the responsibility of us as a community, as citizens, digital citizens, to teach our children what goes on their digital billboard. I've recently had some really enlightening conversations with my 6 and 8-year-old sons based on this Austrian legal suit, and I said to them, I'm going to give a talk in British Columbia, and I'd like to use 2 videos that I've made of you guys, and would it be okay? It's going to be an audience of about 100 people. The video segments are about 30 seconds, but it will be really educational. They both looked at me and said no. And I was like, okay, well, can I make a case for this? And I argued my case. Eventually my 8-year-old broke and said yes, and then my 6-year-old followed suit. So I got their permission to use videos of them in my presentation. It is now more poignant to me than ever that children need to be in on these conversations of what is making up their digital billboards. from the time you involve them in media, because they are not being involved by no one. They are being involved by someone. And if that is true, we are shaping their digital billboards. Think about that for a second. You as parents, as educators somewhat, but I will say more as parents, as peers, you are shaping children's digital billboards. So no, it should not be erased, and yes, it is 100% the responsibility of our digital community, which is the caretakers of this child.
And we're starting even before they're born, because now we're having sonograms and those things being posted, so they get to start. Liz?
I mean, I think there's such a gap, whether we're talking about the laws of sexting and the reality of the world they live in. There's a gap in this is such a microcosm of educators when you think of how many millions of educators are out there. And children learn so differently than probably the vast majority of educators are used to teaching them, right? So parenting is the same way. We're all struggling with this gap of the knowledge of kids and the way they synthesize information and the parents. I agree with Michelle. I don't think it should be wiped away. I think they need a place to continue to learn. But the parents need to get educated on the issue so that they can model it properly by doing exactly what Michelle said. I mean, what perfect modeling of a parent, not Dr. Michelle Drouin, but Mom Drouin, of can I use this? Okay, no, all right, let's talk about it. And she hears them. I was working with a group of 6th graders in New York this week, and we were talking about the effects of your online reputation. I call it their online reputation. In 6th grade, one little boy raised his hand and he said, you know, my mom, she works at this school called Wharton. And I said, like in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
said,
I know
uh-huh. And I go, what does she do? And this is in front of all the kids. And he says, well, she reads essays that the kids write that want to go there. And then she goes and she looks at their social media. And it's one thing for us to stand there and talk to them, but if you wipe it away, you sort of lose that. Then we're sending these kids off at 18-year-olds that have had no experience, no consequences, no good. I mean, I want my kids to mess up a little bit, because that's how they really learn. That when they feel a little pain, a little discomfort, they start to, going back to Olivia's statement, they start to connect the dots. The words are like Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 until it happens to them. I have kids that look at me in 8th grade when we talk about the permanency of what they post. They have all heard 1,000 times by their 13th birthday, what you put up you can't take down, can't delete a picture. And then I'll do the silliest little exercise of pulling off sheets off of a pad of paper with the same picture appearing. And I had a 13-year-old girl look up at me and go, oh, now I get it. And I said, wait, what do you get? And she said, my mom always said, what I put up I can't take down. And I didn't know what she meant. 13, almost a freshman in high school. And then she got it. So I think when we take away, when we say it wipes clean, they have no reason to personalize it, to understand and to connect the dots. So, but the parents' job is to make sure that those stumbles that we all want our kids to make are stumbles, and they're not catastrophic events that change the course of their life. And that's where we come in.
And I think this question is just really reflective of the discourse that's out there right now, and we hear the stories of the kid that just says the wrong thing and loses that scholarship and loses that opportunity to get into college. And then we look at what our political candidates are doing online. And we look at what some of our kids' celebrities that they follow are doing online. And our kids are getting two very different messages. They're hearing don't because, and then they are seeing what their role models are doing, and those messages are very different. And so how do we fill this space and speak truth with kids and not speak fear at them? And I think that question of, should it wipe clean is automatically making this assumption that kids are approaching the internet with the intent to do harm. And I don't think that's the case. I think our kids will slip up. I think they will make mistakes, but they're going to do that offline as well. And I think that as the adults who are developing these curriculum and who are going out and having conversations with kids, I think it needs to be a real conversation, and that we can't just focus on the what ifs and the negatives and
And I think if we step back when we were teenagers and the things that we did, and then think of how visible it is today. And we want kids to learn. We want them to experience. But how do we make that so that the stumbles are not falls? And we don't get into those, you know, those really bad situations where, you know, they take it to the next level, but they can have that conversation.
I think it goes back to forgiveness, and I think it goes back to remembering that our kids are not developed the same way that we are as adults. And so, you know, when our kids make mistakes, I think as the adults we need to look at that and remember where they are developmentally and be able to say, okay, you've made that slip. How do we recover from here, and how do we allow you to continue to be part of this community of learners so that it becomes a learning experience instead of a
I mean, doesn't that go back to your first question about ethics? I mean, isn't that what we're talking about?
It all ties back.
Yeah. We come back.
Thank you for tying all that up in a nice little bow. What questions do you have of these great people? What do we have? They answered absolutely every question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for everyone's comments, like just so helpful and insightful. Considering there's lots of different products and tools out there, what should these companies that are providing these tools be thinking about as we think about the future of digital citizenship and these you know, themes that we're talking about here?
You want to start?
I spent the last year and a half of my life analyzing curriculum that have been produced for high school students, and my big takeaways are that we're doing a lot of top-down as adults saying, hey kids, this is what you do. And when kids enter into digital communities and digital spaces, they're already sort of co-creating these norms. And I think that we need to give kids permission to be part of co-creating that norm or leave that community if they don't agree with those norms. I think our curriculum needs to embed kids and immerse kids in digital spaces. Every curriculum that I reviewed had no expectation of a kid being online. That curriculum could be delivered by a teacher without a single device in the room, and I think that's just the definition of ironic. But I think that our curriculum really does need to listen to student voice, take that into consideration, and immerse kids in these digital communities.
Who else?
So much of what you just said, and you've studied it, and right, spent a year and a half. The curriculum I have is very much the same. Like when I do train the trainers, at first time when I sit in front of an educator, I'm almost embarrassed, and I say like, "This isn't rocket science," and then I think, "No, this isn't rocket science. This is giving them." I'm not going to teach any of those kids in that room something that they don't know. What they need to do is explore it. They need to peel the layers of the onion back. They need to watch a video, get in a small group, and talk about it. Talk about the issues that they live and breathe every day. So I think, when you said the industry, did you mean curriculum, or were you talking more about apps or software? Or I thought. So say the question one more time.
Yeah, so for the companies that develop these apps or tools, what should they be thinking about? What should they be doing so that we can support these themes?
I'm just going to add that I think that we need to consider just how enticing and addictive the apps are, so they need to leverage the appeal of the app with whatever social harm they think might erupt from it. So it's a real ethical decision for app developers. You know what you have is beautiful and appealing, so how do you leverage that with the idea that I don't want it to be so appealing that a child cannot put it down. I think that's a huge issue for developers. I'm glad I'm not in that industry right now.
Sarah Kumar, go ahead.
I would say definitely guides for teachers and educators in general, whether it is a practical tutorial or how to integrate it within different grades, different levels. I think that's definitely a useful step.
I believe just for when you develop an app, and I've developed a few, when you create an app, you always go through the user experience, and you're always going for the positive one. And that is when it's crowdsourced and you're getting all the beautiful feedback and putting it in your app and recoding it. The same should be done for the negative one as well. Crowdsourcing and engaging with the user in cases things go wrong, because they only go wrong a few times compared to when they go right. Otherwise your app is useless. So that is when you need to really let in the user. I think YouTube is just experimenting with it, where it has come up with these champions who will be looking into community standards. More of that will come in, because censorship is something that we don't want. But negative comment and hate speech is also something that we don't want, and we are the best deciders of this aspect. So I would say crowdsourcing and engagement with the users.
Thank you so much to this great panel. I want to thank them.